Tuning in to the online broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans, producing after shows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Hey guys, and welcome back to the mid-season finale of The Walking Dead after show. Joining me today, Joyce Ajouri.
Hi guys.
And Nando Velasquez.
Hello, walkers.
With the pro notes. Now that he's got the laptop out, that's when you can really get work done.
I'm just pulling it out.
You know, so in comparison.
No, it's a smart idea because when I take notes, I'm a much slower writer than typer, so it's smart.
Yeah.
But this was a big episode. This is actually, I mean, Bob was a big death before, but we get our first really main crew death here because Beth's been with us since season 2. I believe it was season 2.
Yeah. Herschel's farm.
Right, that was Herschel's farm. So she's been with us since season 2. Now, she did try to commit suicide, then she failed, but now she just came back.
Well, she pretty much tried to commit suicide by doing what she did.
She pretty much did. So, but yeah, this is like the first really big death we've had, I think, since Herschel. So. Big main crew death.
Oof, I was devastated, and I know, like, even though when we were speculating who would die first, I think one of you guys mentioned before also that you would think either Death or Carol would go.
Yeah.
I mean, you've said that a few times, and with that in the back of my head, when it actually happened, I was like, I teared up. I was so sad. It's like when Herschel died. That's the same. I felt the same way.
It seemed to be, you know, if you looked on the internet this week and people talking about who might go, I think Beth was a front runner for who was going to go, and I just refused to want to believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's also kind of like when you think of, I guess it's almost that Daryl love triangle thing. It's like, well, there can only be one.
Well, also we see her character really evolving into something stronger, and it would have been nice to see her.
Walking Dead's a red flag.
Well, I guess. Well, I mean, look, Carol's also much stronger now. Yeah. So you know, I guess that's why the two of them were really at the top of people's lists as to who wasn't going to make it.
Well, I think to me it was the fact that they were both in the hospital together. It was almost that idea of like that's where all the tension is, this hospital, and you almost feel like, well, there's only one of them who's going to make it out alive. It didn't matter which characters it were. It didn't matter who it was. It was just the fact that there were two characters in this deadly situation trying to get out. It feels like only one of them's going to get out.
It wasn't going to turn out right at all.
Yeah. I'm going to say it just because I feel like it should be said. It was a lame way to go, and I feel like you know what? It's a great shocker. You know, it was a shocking ending for her, but at the same time, I think it was just lame.
Like dignity-wise for Beth. It was kind of
dignity-wise. I mean, she's standing up to Dawn. I guess I don't know, but I just feel it was a lame. It was a lame death scene in a way. You know, it was unfortunate. It was more of an accident, but you know, it wasn't like a blaze of glory. It wasn't really some. I mean, all the tension and you know, I mean, for a hostage trade-off scene, I do Homeland also, and the Homeland scene from last week with the hostage trade-off was so much more tension.
Another Homeland connection every week.
Yeah,
They're doing
it seems like there's some connections in the sense of some plot points, but yeah, I mean, that was such a dumb way to go.
And I was wondering why was Beth doing that? Why did she have to go up to Dawn and stab her? I mean, I don't know. It could have just ended right there.
Well, the funny thing is, the first time she did that with the scissors at the end of Slabtown, she looked like she was possibly going to go for the doctor, for Edwards. Yeah. And, of course, she wasn't able to because then she saw Carol. So here she is doing it again, and this time she does it to Dawn. And, yeah, again, it almost doesn't make sense. It's like you're about to leave. You know, you're being traded off, and she grabbed the scissors like one last bit of revenge.
It's like, you know how fragile the situation is. You know how on edge everyone's going to be. There's no way that it's not going to end the way it ended for her.
What did you guys think of her last words then?
Well, I mean, okay, well,
I get it.
On the chat, Bart saying Beth saved Noah, John Wayne saying Carol saved the group, and Beth saved Carol. But I mean, that was what it was it wasn't like, to her, she just thought of it as, it's a one-on-one trade-off. That's what all of these things are about. So she got that. Dawn, quote, wanted Noah, but she really wanted Beth. So Beth was like, okay, no, I'm going to save Noah. Noah saved me earlier. I'm going to save Noah. So I think that's all her intentions were. I know, as you said, Nando, it's super intense, tense situation and just like you're about to get out and leave and you're gonna be safe. But to her, it's like, well, this is me paying back Noah. And maybe that's actually, Steven, what you're saying. I get what you said, what Dawn said about like the lines of like you're paying someone back. And everything you do, you have to pay somebody back. Maybe that was her saying that because she's paying back Noah for what Noah did.
She's like, I get it. I get the whole point of the way you guys operate.
Right. So maybe she was saying that about Noah in the sense that she did it. She's now paying back Noah by what she's doing.
I honestly don't get it. I don't get what she meant by that. And I really feel like even though they kind of disagree on certain things, I really felt, especially that scene in the elevator shaft, which I'm sure we'll get into, they kind of bonded a little bit more. And there seemed to be some kind of understanding and relationship. And for her to do it, just to me, if someone wants to explain it to me, go ahead. But right now, I'm still trying to process it. It doesn't make as much sense to me.
Yeah, it didn't make too much sense to me either.
Matique, if I'm mispronouncing that, I'm sorry, saying that was a sorry pair of scissors to try to kill someone with. And Bart saying Beth did what Dawn couldn't, stand up for what's right. And Pat saying he cried. Seeing Emily Kinney cry on Talking Dead when she talked about the scene made me cry and like her as a person even more.
So what do you guys?
That's her career too. So
do you guys think she knew she was going to die when she attacked Dawn?
I figured she must have. She assumed that something was going to happen.
What do you mean? Emily or Beth?
Beth. Because what I'm trying to picture in my mind, I told you guys I wouldn't chime in. I lied. What I picture in my mind is that she would have to know that in a situation like that, if she stabbed the head cop in charge, she'd get shot by somebody. So the only thing I can think of is when she says, "I get it now," and their previous conversation was about everyone who wants to go home eventually comes back because this is the world it is. I feel like she's trying to prevent Noah from going back, and I feel like she just understands that there's no getting out of this.
And in real life, if that situation happens, everyone starts shooting their guns and everyone else dies.
Yeah.
It was just a dumb move. Okay, I mean, like maybe there's some dramatic reason for doing it, but it was a dumb move. It was. I mean, Daryl was almost going to shoot him anyway, you know, but he didn't.
If she was sacrificing herself for Noah's safety, I don't know. I don't agree with that move, and it's mostly because I just don't want her gone out of the show.
Well, we've grown and bonded with Beth, so as an audience member, you're like, I care more about Beth than Noah.
The only thing I could probably say is at one point when Beth and Dawn are talking, she said this, and I rewound it, but unfortunately I wasn't able to write the whole thing down because something was going on. Beth says to Dawn, "This is who you are, and this is what you'll be till the end." I believe that's what she said. So if anything, she was stabbing her because to release Dawn in some kind of way, because obviously, you know, for a moment Dawn did the trade, and all of a sudden she became petty and wanted Noah back, and it was a very petty move. Even Shepard was like trying to stop her, and then she told Shepard.
Shepard became the immediate leader afterwards too. She stepped up. John Wayne on the chat saying Beth was trying to say you're not going to use me again. That's how he interpreted that line. Was
to get Noah back, because you're not going to use me to get Noah back. But
well, I mean, just essentially like. I get what you mean, but she was that, as you said at first, Nando, it was just that whole "I'm gonna get back at you, Dawn" thing, even as immature as it would be in this situation.
Well, I want to tie it back to the title of the episode real quick here for a second, because the title of the episode is entitled Coda, which, if you guys have been trained musically, you know that there's points in music where you'll go to certain sections or repeat a certain section a number of times until you hit the coda, where you go to the end, or it takes you to the coda, which is the end of the piece, where it's ending. So if you think of it that way, a lot of the time during this episode they mentioned Hanson and how like it had repeated itself, where you can't leave, you always come back, everything keeps repeating, and then Beth was basically bringing the story arc to the coda where it would end.
Okay. Yeah, because then it brought also that new leader who actually seemed to be thoughtful and actually smart, and not another Hanson and not another Dawn, right? And didn't murder her predecessor.
There's some sense there,
right? Another thing too with the name Coda also is who is our musical character who's always sung throughout various episodes, and it's her end as well, so that might be a tie-in reason for calling it that.
Those are some good points.
I think that fits in with her, very well.
Yeah, so we'll talk more about this as we wrap back around to the hostage trade-off, but we're going to go ahead and talk about the kind of the C storyline, I guess you could say, which is the whole church Gabriel scene, with Gabriel's storyline, which was essentially that he wants to understand and as at least what he keeps on saying, and he really does, his whole entire arc is finally realizing what he'd done to everyone else and putting himself in that situation that he put everybody else into, and just realizing what everyone else felt in that mass panic.
Yeah, he got a taste of his own medicine.
Yeah.
In a sense. And I thought it was cool to see him sort of go out there and finally learn what it's really been like out there. I mean,
yeah.
He was out there in the schoolyard picking up a Bible, flipping through it, and then like he saw the walkers in the building and everything, and he wasn't really fazed by them until they started charging at him. And it's like, this is what it's like. You can't just hang out here and think it's all gonna be, you know, shoved under the rug. Like, this is the way the world has been.
Yeah, that's a great point, because before he's always seen the walkers and at least heard them, because in the church you hear them, but like...
But he doesn't know what it takes to evade them and you know, what they need to be killed.
Yeah, also the thing too is that he, as he was running away, was almost a walker himself, because he was limping and
that's true.
Also having trouble running.
And when he was finally at the church's doorstep, and he grabbed one of those spears or whatever they are, like you said when we were watching, it's like he doesn't know to kill them. You need to stab him in the head. He was just sort of like pushing him away with
he doesn't
was blocking the door.
I mean, he's terrible at killing them, and I think what was really awesome was you know, he goes to the school, I guess, to see for himself. He said it later on, to see everything for himself, and to see how, I guess, the world is. He comes back. And here he is trying to get into his own church, which he locked out his parishioners from. Yeah. And because Michonne and Carl boarded up the place, he couldn't get in. So it was very, very ironic in that sense. And really, I think that, you know, the church, and you'll see it, you know, the more we talk about this, I think I said this in another episode, I really see the church as his tomb, and him trying to get out of his tomb last week. Yeah. And ultimately we see that the tomb ends up having walkers in it. So, and in a way it releases Gabriel. It releases him, you know, from that place. He can't go back at all.
Emantique on the chat saying Gabriel's the worst. If they can redeem the character in the second half of the season, it would be a miracle. They did try to, he sort of, at least his character seemed to try to redeem himself when he was in the church and being the one who is the last one out, to say like, hey, Michonne, Judith, Carl, you guys go first. I'll come after you're gone. And he actually followed through with that, and it seemed like for him, his own personal redemption, to actually help people this time around and do the right thing in his last moments in the church too.
Yeah. I hope his redemption isn't just him learning how to kill the walkers.
I mean, that was a walker tripping over and falling on his machete.
I know.
Awesome shot. That was awesome.
I want his redemption to be more than that. I want it to be like, I don't know, maybe he has a strategic mind that we're going to learn about later, and he's going to help.
Sorry.
Very little faith.
Very little faith.
Very little faith in Gabriel.
He's going to have use. He's going to have use, but not as a killer. You know, maybe a moral compass eventually, but not as somebody you want to put in the front lines.
I like Michonne's immediate use of the blade again now that she has it.
So badass.
Yeah, like,
kicked ass.
It's just that which was great. I just want to bring that up. There's not too much with Michonne, but we do get with her is as Abraham's group comes back, everyone's now back, and we were wondering what they were going to do. It turns out they came right back to the church. And Pat was asking us on the chat, what do you guys think of Maggie's reaction after not asking about her sister for a long time? Did you buy it? And here's the start of that reaction: is Michonne telling Maggie Beth's alive, and Maggie's roller coaster emotions in this episode in one day's time. But just the fact that we haven't, as we joked about on this show, Maggie doesn't seem to care about Beth at all, because she's never once asked about Beth. She's never said anything.
She's cared about Glenn more than anything.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, but you would also think that Beth was at the forefront of her mind.
Well, I mean, you have your, it's like when you're married, it's like you have your husband, and that's kind of like tends to take priority a lot of times, but it still is funny that she never once has said anything. This is kind of the first mention. Yeah.
I feel like maybe this might be totally wrong. I don't even know why they would have Maggie not ask about her sister, but maybe it was just kind of Maggie getting comfortable and maybe assuming that, you know, if she just sort of believes that her sister is neither dead or alive, she doesn't really worry about it. She doesn't feel anything about it. But knowing that she's alive, like, for sure, that's what brought about those emotions.
I think look, if
like
it was
cat.
if Beth was Glenn and Maggie couldn't find Glenn, you would see a lot more emotions from her the past couple of episodes. So to see that gut reaction from her when Michonne said it, I mean, we all kind of laughed at it a little bit. Yeah. You know, we all were like, oh, now she cares about Beth. So, you know, I think that was just a misstep with maybe the writers, the way things were directed.
Yeah, I mean,
I just feel it was a misstep.
As a character and a person, you'd assume she does care. But as the way the show was written, it's just kind of odd, just specifically in the way it's written.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I think like it's a believable character trait to feel that way and that sense of relief and all that. As a person, it's just, since we've never seen her talk about, that's why we got that laugh out of it and her reaction.
And honestly, I mean, I'll say this. I mean, part of the thing, and it's no one's fault really. I think the way it was cast, is that I don't, you know, there's no family resemblance between Beth and Maggie. So there have been times in this show when I've even forgotten that they're related. You know, it's like they've kept them so far apart, even before Beth, you know, before the whole thing that happened at the prison that separated them, that sometimes it's a big reminder. I think Herschel was the only tie-in to both of them. And then especially once Herschel's gone, is even less reason to really anchor the two of them together.
Yeah. They also are very age separated.
Yeah. That's
one thing too. But Baha Val in the chat saying, when Maggie was all happy after Michonne told her Beth was at the hospital, I was like, seriously? Now you care? It just bugged me that she never mentioned her before that. So sort of what we've just been talking about.
I can see both points of this, but I also see an opposite side where they could be setting up for giving Beth more, giving Maggie more character confusion and more emotion in the next coming episodes, just because she's been such a hard ass lately ever since Herschel was killed in front of her. Like, emotionally, she's just not been there. So right now, she gets this news that she's alive, and then she gets the news that breaks her that she's already dead. So it kind of cracks the skin of the armor that she's put up. So it leaves room for...
Yeah, but to be honest, I mean, the next episode's 2 months from now, and I almost feel like I would rather just Maggie go back to the way she was, where she kind of forgot about Beth. Because that's really what we were used to seeing.
But I agree with you, Steve. I think you're right, especially given what we saw for the previews, which I don't want to talk too much about, but it does seem like that's what Maggie's character arc is going to be at this point. But it's just... yeah, it's just more of like, I'd say it was more odd writing throughout the way the season has been structured this season. It's just... Throughout the way the season's been structured this season, that's a terrible way to say that, but the way that's been structured, just the way that she's talked and the way she's acted is just sort of an odd sense for us as a viewer to get that all of a sudden. But I can understand it as a person where she would get that. But she then does get that emotional roller coaster of like, hey, this morning I found out my sister's actually alive. Oh no.
It's like, now my entire family's
dead. She's dead. Well, her husband's still alive though.
Well, I mean like blood family.
I will say that like her scene at the very end when she gets the news and sees Beth's body, it was a pretty epic like reaction, kind of like what happened with Rick. When Lori was dead.
Yeah, it was very, very
drop
similar.
On the ground. It was a very similar scene with that whole drop on the ground and screaming no. Yeah, it was very, very similar to...
They just have similar acting styles, you know?
They're both British. Yeah, they're both British too, so there you go.
Yeah, her reaction definitely tugged on my heartstrings.
That was a big reaction, I will say that.
I felt it.
That wasn't as funny as when Michonne told it.
No, yeah, well, I mean, that reaction was more believable to me than when Michonne told her. Like, when Michonne told her and all of a sudden she's like, oh my God.
It was kind of like her confirming what she told herself all along. Like, she probably told herself this whole time that Beth is alive, Beth is somewhere, Beth is taking care of herself. So when Michonne told her, it's like, oh, okay, great. This is something I already believed and
but in all fairness,
now that she's dead, it's like the complete opposite of what she believed in this whole time.
But in all fairness, you kind of needed that reaction from her with Michonne in order to really set up that final scene.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
That would have been funny in itself if it went straight to that.
I think that's the main purpose, was to set up the final scene. Absolutely, just to tug on your heartstrings even more.
Yeah.
So the other thing we can talk about just briefly is the fact that we do have the thing that we questioned about last week, which is that the group has come back now. Instead of heading to DC or trying to find alternate route, they decided to come back and be part of the big group again. And now everyone's going to know also that Washington, D.C. is a lie. Yeah. Except for a certain character at the end. He doesn't know.
Uh-oh. Someone's getting misled.
Well, I think I think we'll end up seeing them meet up somehow. So we'll see how that happens.
I think it's nice, though, that we got to have the question answered right away this season. That, okay, the group, they're reunited again. We don't have to wait an entire half season to find that out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I mean, I was expecting them to be reunited last week, with the exception of Beth and Carol, but you know they waited a week
had
on
to hang around and wait for Eugene to wake up, and he's still not awake.
Yeah,
he's
still kind of sleeping. Sleeping it off.
Going back to reactions to Beth's death, I think Daryl was the one that broke me. When he started tearing up.
That too, yeah.
Well, especially because you never see Daryl. No, like that.
Exactly. And obviously him and Beth got close, and to have that affect him that way, and to see his reaction, that broke me.
Yeah, it was tough seeing Daryl, especially. Well, I was gonna say it's almost like kind of sexist, but like when you see a man cry, it's almost more hits you because men are supposed to be the tough ones who don't.
I totally believe that.
So it's just like when you see that, it's just like, oh, shit really went down. Like something's really bad. It feels like, and that's almost a sexist thing to say, but it really does come across that way a lot of times. So I totally understand where you're coming across, and I still get that because it's almost like seeing your dad cry too. For me, it's like, oh no.
That's always tough.
Yeah, like, which I don't think I've actually ever seen, but if I did, that would really hit me. So yeah, so that's kind of that group. So then we got the hospital group, and we got a lot more about the relations with Beth and Dawn specifically. They really tried to build that up. And on the chat, people seem to really hate Dawn, so people aren't at all sad. Bart specifically, I think, was saying, I hated Dawn, glad she's dead. So people not caring about her. But they really try to build up what exactly is going on through Dawn's mind, and you really start to see this broken character throughout. I mean, you see what she's dealing with, which are the horrible cops that she has to deal with, but she's, as I believe you said, Nando, she's just not strong enough to deal with it, and Beth ends up being the strong one in this situation.
Well, I mean, it's a different kind of strength, but I think there's a lot there about, you know, her repeating herself, you know, just the fact that she... I'm looking for it right now. There was here's the thing. She said this one line about you don't need, when she was talking about Hanson and the fact that, you know, he didn't realize that the cops that go out there risk their lives every time they go out there. You don't need their love, but you got to have their respect. And she said that line at later on in the same scene where she's complaining that Liccardi, Shepard, and Lamson don't always radio back, and she drives them crazy. And I just feel like there's your lack of respect right there. You have you have officers who are out on patrol, and they're not radioing back, and she actually is used to it.
Yeah,
she's actually saying, well, they don't always radio back, and I think that's definitely a sign of the position she's in and the hold that she has, and the fact that she has sacrificed. She literally has been sacrificing herself this whole time, living in this loop, in this circle, just barely surviving by you know, letting these officers get away with what they want, letting them rape people, letting them do that because she felt that's the only way to keep everybody together and keep this system going.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a real shame. In fact, you know, I think that's why I think in a way Beth did what she did to release her from that pattern. But yeah, I mean, I liked Dawn as a character for a second. I actually thought, you know, I could see her. I said this last week too. I could see her with the group because she's not an evil person, but she's definitely misunderstood, and she is someone who needs to learn a different way.
Yeah. See, I disagree. I didn't like her very much, and I don't think she would have fit in with the group. I think with the way that she tried to, you know, keep that leadership, I feel like there would have been conflict with the group if she were to join Rick and them.
But she did have that redeeming quality. I don't know. I want to call it redeeming with O'Donnell.
She also really confused me.
Yeah, well, I get what you're saying, Nando, though. Yeah. I understand what you're saying, where the point is that she's not inherently bad. She just doesn't know how to handle the situation, and she's not very good at it. And it clearly upsets her what's happening, but she doesn't know how to handle it properly, and she's really not the right person for the job. But I like this little conversation that was going on in the chat, so I'm just going to throw this out here real quick. John Wayne saying, Carol recovered faster than Eugene, and then Bart answering, well, Abraham's punches are harder than a car. I just thought that was a great, that was great, Bart. So anyway.
But I do think there was I mean, it was a little bit of a redeeming quality with Dawn and O'Donnell when she was, I mean, because, you know, she admitted this guy was laughing at the other officers when they were raping people, you know, and she stood up to him. Although as Beth said, she did it more for herself than anyone else.
Exactly. I always feel like she had an ulterior motive, and I believed her when she told O'Donnell, like, I can't believe who you are now. This is who you are now. You know, you're laughing at girls getting raped and all that stuff. But then it's like she was only looking out for herself, which of course you have to in this world, in this situation. But she was very, like, too wishy-washy for me.
Well, I see it just as a very conflicted person. So I think that, yes, she's looking out for herself. That's absolutely what she cares about. But she does care about the things she talked about, the fact that O'Donnell's a crooked cop and doing these horrible things and all that. And she does care. She just can't figure out how to deal with it. And the only way she can understand how to is through manipulation. So that's what she's doing, because that's the only thing she can figure out.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work in her favor, because letting everyone do whatever they want to do doesn't give her the respect that maybe she thinks it would get her.
Well, even her last act, trying to get Noah back, I think that was just as much trying to save face.
Like she was
trying to one-up, hanging on with the cops.
That's exactly what I thought, too. I was like, oh, she's just saving face. I thought the exact same thing about that.
She's trying to turn this around, and if she wins it, then she clearly has control over something.
Yeah, that's exactly how I read that situation, too. If only they had 3 people to trade.
What did you guys think of that final scene when they're all in the hallway and you're seeing Rick's group, which is all loyal and put together and loyal for each other, and then you look at the hospital group and they're the ones who are all dressed up, they're all in uniforms, they all look so perfectly organized, but they all hate each other and would slash each other's throats.
Well, that's what you're saying. They're all hating each other. I mean, we just know that they don't like Dawn. Yeah, the politics.
Well, I honestly thought it would go haywire a lot quicker. I didn't think it would be as calm as it was. Like, they definitely did a good job with the tension in that scene, because I was sort of waiting for just a shootout or for the trade to not happen, or, you know, something to just go wrong a lot quicker than it did.
Yeah, well, I mean, with that scene too, they also did the crooked angle, where it wasn't a straight angle. They do what I think of as the Resident Evil angle, because they do in all the Resident Evil games, but it's like they do in a lot of horror movies where it's slightly off angle, it's at a diagonal to make it look more intense, because something feels off when you do that inherently. So I noticed they were using that angle a lot, specifically during that scene, during the trade-off scene, which I think we should talk about that after the group. But that was, I mean, that was major stuff for Dawn's happening. But we also have Dawn and Beth really kind of bonding in a way, it seems like. But it was all about specifically Dawn's character and her characterization and finding out where she was. So the question then, I guess, is really, do you believe Dawn's convictions, and she really, when she's told Beth, I wasn't trying to manipulate you, and she really seemed to mean it, do you think she was again trying to manipulate Beth in that moment, or do you think she was really meant it and she really didn't do it with intentions of having Beth on her side?
I think she really meant it. I actually do think she really meant it. I think, you know what, look, I wouldn't call her a villain, but even a villain thinks what they're doing is right. I don't think she's that manipulative. I think it would be more evil if she was lying to Beth, but I don't think she was lying to Beth. There were some people on YouTube last week who said they felt like when she called Beth strong, when she said she thought she was weak, but she realized she's not, that they thought she was manipulating her even then. And based on what we've seen, I don't agree with that.
No, I also believed her. I was like, I mean, I get where Beth's coming from, especially when you feel like the victim, you're going to automatically think things are against you.
Yeah.
And that, oh, well, obviously Dawn was manipulating, especially Dr. Stevens was the one who planted that seed in her mind that Dawn's always manipulating everybody. But I believe that Dawn probably really was just, maybe she was just trying to do the right thing for once. And that's where you saw her character growth go, and her minor arc that we get is she's finally trying to do the right thing until the other side comes and prevails in the end during the trade-off.
Or maybe if she was really being manipulative, maybe that is sort of what Beth meant when she said, I get it now. Like, she finally understood that she was still trying to get to her and manipulate her, and she, like, released her from that. Like, stopped her by killing her from doing that again to other people.
Armani Barron on the chat saying, no, Dawn is a mind funker.
Well,
I made that PC.
You guys, thanks. You can think what you want. That's my thought.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, that's why I was asking, because I think that's a good question to bring up, especially since we have Dr. Stevens' side that we got last week of, is Dawn manipulative, and is that all she was doing, and as she's talking to Beth. But let's go ahead and move over to the main crew now, and really the start of the episode where we have Lamson running away, and just great stuff from Rick there.
Well, this is another scene where
This
is another scene where I don't know. I guess story-wise, I just feel it's weird. You know, this was a big cliffhanger. Lawson escapes. Not Lawson. Lamson escapes. I keep wanting to call him Lawson. Lamson escapes, and we figure, stuff's going down. Lamson's gonna, mess everything up, and then we see this scene and Lamson's dead within like 3 minutes.
I was like, damn, he went quick.
That was quick. It ended up being a kind of a non-issue, really.
I feel like that's one of those things where they're in the writer's room and they're like, we need a cliffhanger, and they just came up with a cliffhanger on the spot to end last week, and they're like, okay, let's just resolve it, because it was one of those things, when you're in the writer's room moment, you're just like, we need the cliffhanger to end the episode, and that's probably what that was.
I mean, the only things that I thought were really interesting about that scene were, I mean, I guess it shows that Rick is definitely willing to do whatever it takes to try and save the plan. So, you know, he's willing to run him over. And then the other really awesome thing is there was a line that was said, and this is also, here's that whole Bob. His name's Bob, and we had Bob before.
Yeah.
He's, you know, Rick says to Bob, you can't go back, Bob. He actually said that, which is exactly what Gareth said to our deceased Bob, right when he was about to chomp into some leg. Yeah, he said, you can't go back, Bob, and I think he even said it in the first episode this season.
Yeah.
Which, that leg we saw when Gabriel was in the schoolyard.
Oh, yeah, that's a great point. You do see that. You do see Bob's leg, too. Both Bob's.
But I think it really shows, I mean, this is when Gareth said that to Bob. I mean, what do you guys think of him saying that to Bob in comparison to Rick saying this to this officer?
I actually hadn't noticed that. Now that you're pointing that out, I'm like, oh, because you think of the other characters being this more evil character than Rick. I really don't know.
I mean, Rick saying it just plainly, I think, like, he kept telling Bob, like, all you have to do is stop, and like, since you didn't, you can't go back. It's like, now this is what I think of you. We can't backtrack and make it this any better.
That line stuck to
I'm
me.
thinking maybe it's that matter-of-factness of a leadership in a sense, because the character who said before was our former leader of the cannibals, and now we're getting the leader of Rick and Rick's crew saying it, and it's almost, again, that comparison of leadership between Dawn, who doesn't have leadership. So with Rick, you have very clear-cut and dry rules, and you follow those rules or you don't, whereas Dawn's all this weird manipulation stuff going on. But with Rick, it's like, again, as he says, all you had to do is stop. Things are just very clear-cut with him, and I think that could be what the case is, and maybe it's just a point of that's how a leader functions, or a decent leader is you just have these clear-cut sets of rules in this world, and there's not as much, I mean, there's still gray area, but there's not as much room for it.
But I think it definitely goes to point with the gray area, because I think obviously Rick has to do certain things to be a leader, and someone else on YouTube this week was talking about it a little bit, but you know, you have to question him sometimes. You know, he is a leader, and I still feel like, you know, they're setting him up to be the leader. He has to do questionable things, but here he is saying you can't go back, Bob, and I really feel like that's also to him. He can't go back to the past. He's got to move forward in this way. Yeah. And this is the way he has to save his people.
Another thing too, just that I thought was kind of funny is Rick plows down Lamson with the car. I was thinking, Lamson just got a taste of his own medicine, because that's what we've been seeing the cops doing.
That's
to
what
people.
they did to Carol.
Yeah, that's what they did to Carol. That's what you assume they've done to other people too.
Yeah.
So I was just like, well, now you understand what it feels like.
I feel like a lot of people got a taste of their own medicine this episode.
Yeah, very much so. So, and then the other crew that we get then is Tyreese and Sasha's relationship. We get a little bit more evolving with that, and Tyreese, I guess, as you were talking about, Nando, with Rick wanting to, just saying there's no going back to the past and moving on, we have Tyreese very much wanting to be in the past. And Sasha being on the side of, well, there's no going back for me personally, and she's ready to move on to this new world. And actually, I guess when you think about it,
go back either.
That's almost the theme of the whole episode when you really think about it, because Dawn, her entire thing and her entire character is that she wants to, she's become someone she doesn't like, specifically so eventually one day that we don't know, she can go back again, like go back.
Well, the whole cycle starts over again. So you know, maybe not her specifically, but the whole thing goes back, and you can't go. And this was Beth ending that loop in a way. So yeah, there's a lot of that.
Well, I'm saying for her, go back to before Walkers. I mean, that's like what her thing was like. I want to be the person I was before the Walkers, and Beth pointing out like
that's true.
And Beth pointing out like things are done, like things are how they are now. And this is the exact same thing conversation we get with Tyreese and Sasha, where Tyreese again is saying that he still wants to be who he was before the Walkers.
Well, I think that's great what you say with Dawn. Just as far as you know, she's stuck in her little box, so to speak, in the hospital. She's stuck being this person in this box because she can't go back, and she's limiting herself by staying there. Yeah. And that's even why, you know, I thought maybe she'd move forward and get out of there eventually, because, well, she did. just upward, not outward. But yeah, but I think that's really, really big. And I think even with Sasha, you know, in a different way, she's moving forward. The other characters like Rick and Sasha, I think they're moving forward, whereas opposed to Dawn is just staying where she's at.
Yeah.
hoping to go back.
And also, as per Tyreese and Sasha's conversation, she told Tyreese, like, you haven't changed. He's
Right.
like, you haven't changed. I've changed. So maybe it's in that vein. It's bad for Tyreese that he's still the same guy.
I think Tyreese has changed.
Well,
but,
it's also what
differently.
Tyreese talks about though, with the character whose name I wrote down, but I'm not remember them. But the character Martin, thank you.
Yeah.
So for Martin, he thinks about all the time the fact that he let Martin just survive because that's who he was in the past. And to me, it's like almost as if he's questioning his decision in this, because this is now someone who came back to try to eat everyone who he knew and kill everyone who he knew because he let that person live. And he seems to be questioning if it was right for him to stay in the past and still be who he is and the way that things are now.
I want to bring up a side note just because it was brought up on YouTube. I read YouTube a lot, and sometimes I talk way too damn much on there or get into little arguments with whoever. But somebody was bringing up that Chad Coleman in that scene with Martin when he was pummeling Martin was his intention was to kill Martin, and he said that, and Chad said that on the Talking Dead.
Yeah.
But this goes to show, and I brought it up on YouTube, that you can never 100% trust the actor when he's talking about his process in that moment, because he doesn't read ahead necessarily to where the producers. He doesn't know the whole story.
Well, as we know,
and here's an example that Chad Coleman thought he was killing Martin.
Yeah.
But Tyreese wasn't killing Martin.
Well, we know with The Walking Dead too, and we've had people on the show before, or with Walking Dead, because we've had people on the show from The Walking Dead. They've talked about how sometimes they get a script a week ahead of time. They don't even know; they just get the script as they go. So it's just like
they process whatever they
so
have
they process what they have in the moment. So that's so piggybacking on what you were talking about. Imatik saying Rick's been right all season. He needs to start trusting his own opinion. So tired of this gentle giant BS with Tyrese. Will the Walker please eat his ass? And I like Tyrese. I like Tyrese. I just want him to evolve a bit. And I'm not saying kill people. I actually like that about him, that he can't kill people. That's kind of a nice admirable quality about him.
He's that guy in the group.
Right, which is fine. Like, that's fine to have that guy, even though you kind of need to in here, or you do need to. You don't kind of need to, but I just want him not to have to worry about killing walkers anymore. I'd like to see him loosen up about the walker thing.
I disagree, but
you like who he is right now?
There should be more to him than that worry.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing I see with Tyreese, and I think Andrea was kind of similar. I mean, a lot of people ended up not liking Andrea because they just stuck to this whole, like, she's whining all the time and she can't even shoot a gun when pardon me, minor spoiler from stuff in the comics, she was a marksman. She's a marksman in the comic books. I
wouldn't call that a spoiler when she's long gone.
Well, it happened, but no. But I'm sorry. As far as the comics are concerned, So, and I just felt like they were just like dragging this character trait of hers for so long that it was annoying people. And I really think that Tyreese, they're doing the same thing. They're just dragging this gentle giant character trait for so long, and maybe there'll be a payoff, or maybe they'll finally be like, you know what, I really think that Tyreese was one of the more popular characters when he first came on the TV show. People were like, oh my god, Tyreese is here. And now it's like, really, I just want to see more Michonne.
Well, especially if you know about the comic version of Tyreese, that's where people were like, comic version.
I know, but that's the thing, and there was a lot of comments about that too, and I just wanted to bring that up.
I'm sure there will be a lot of payoff. I mean, there are so many characters in this show.
But there was no payoff for Andrea.
Okay, fair enough.
No, that was
there was no payoff for Andrea. They decided to get rid of her before.
But maybe now, this time around, since one character is gone, Beth, rest in peace, they'll have more time to focus on another one like Tyreese.
It's also a different showrunner now. But the thing with Tyrese's character, I'm saying, like, I'm one of the people who disliked Andrea. I didn't like her because she was very whiny to me.
I don't take me too.
Right, I don't take Tyreese as being whiny per se. I just I see it as this is his opinion as opposed to him whining about it. And when other people do it, he's not like, oh guys, gosh.
No, true. But it's still annoying because it's like, he can. He can get off of it. We've seen him do it in a way past.
Beast mode it.
Right. Yeah, it's just more of like, since you've seen him be a certain way, you're like, I want you to be this way, Tyreese.
And they had that scene way back when he couldn't shoot a gun, and they have that scene with him like up at the sniper's perch, and I'm even like, don't you guys remember when he couldn't shoot a damn gun, and now you have him on there on top of I mean, he ended up not being one of the snipers.
No, we forgot.
Yeah, but it's like, just it doesn't make sense. It doesn't. The way his character
also didn't make sense was those two cops that couldn't see Sasha and Tyreese up on that roof, getting ready to snipe them.
Yeah,
that bothered the hell out of me.
Well, I took it to be. I mean, at first, I took it to be that maybe they weren't expecting this big group who have sniper rifles ready to go. They just thought it was a couple like road warriors or something.
It's been how many years in the apocalypse? They're not used to snipers.
Like they're not thinking like I've got this organized team with snipers who are that thought out. So I can understand that they just drive in and not think to look up at the top of a building. But then after the walker was sniped, then you think they look up and be like
he looked in every direction but theirs.
He looked down. He's like, maybe they're coming from the pipe, maybe the sewers. I like poking the head through his sword.
He was a little too shocked. Yeah, he was a little too shocked.
Yeah, but yeah, it was fun. Definitely funny that they never realized. But so then that's I guess what we have for the rest of it is really just this whole trade-off situation, the whole negotiations that we've already touched on a lot. But the way that you see Rick handling it, and did you feel like Rick did a good job overall?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think
so.
I think it worked out. Yeah, he did. I mean, other than the fact, I mean, he couldn't control Beth.
Yeah,
you know. Yeah. Other than that,
I mean, especially as he has this conversation with Daryl, who's now wingman, which is like, what are we going to do now when they lose Lamson? Because they really have to figure out who can they trust in the moment. And they had Lamson before, which was their third person and an extra negotiation piece that they had. And can they even trust? Can they even trust the lady who's Shepard? Can they even trust Shepard? Mm-hmm. So he actually, and he definitely he did it. He did well.
I think so too.
Here's an interesting question though, and I'm just taking this from John Wayne. I'm adding to it. John Wayne posted on the chat. I wonder if Rick will blame Daryl and Tyreese for losing Beth, and I don't think he will. But I think it really does make a point that if we did Rick's plan, they would have been so busy like sniping and killing all the police officers, they would have saved Beth. So I think there is something to say that at least the intention. We don't know. I was getting into this one argument with this one guy about Tyrese's plan is better than Rick's. I'm like, no, it's not.
Like if they just swiped their necks like he wanted
if we just slit everybody's necks as they were going along and did like a little Navy SEAL type operation and got everybody, they probably would have saved, more likely would have saved Beth and Carol, because Beth wouldn't have had the opportunity.
They could have easily killed Dawn first if that was their plan.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, though, it's that mentality of you go back and you're like hindsight 2020 type of thing, and it's also like in a situation like that, you don't know what the outcome is going to be. It's very much a hindsight 2020, and even in that situation, it's still that like grass is green on the other side. Maybe they would have beat everyone out, as you said, Nando. Maybe they would have done really well with their Navy SEAL operation, and maybe, as Tyreese suggested, one person would have spotted them, shouted out, and then there would have been a gunfight, and it would have been really bad.
I hope they have that conversation when the season comes back. Like, I hope that comes up between Daryl and Tyreese and Rick.
I almost feel like Rick, I don't know, I don't feel like he's the type of character at this point who's going to linger on something like that. I feel like his character is very much,
they're gonna like,
this is what happened, and we move on from here.
Right, but I feel like Daryl, since he seems to be the most distraught out of those three guys over Beth, maybe he'll bring it up at least.
I feel that because the next episode is 2 months later, they're just going to start, without getting into predictions, fresh. I think they're going to pretty much start fresh. I mean, obviously, Beth's death's going to affect the group, kind of like Herschel's death did at the mid-season finale last year. But I don't think I don't think Beth's death affects the group the way Herschel's did, and I think it'll be very minor. It might affect Maggie and Daryl, but I think those are the two characters it'll affect the most.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it'll probably affect Daryl more than Maggie. I really think Maggie's going to forget about it after 5 minutes with Glenn. So
forget about it. She's going to be like,
I'm with Glenn.
Glenn is her sanctuary. That's really nice, though.
Yeah,
that's sweet to think about.
Well, also and for Daryl, this was the person who's finally opening him up too. So it's like he's losing that. He still has Carol, but Beth is who we saw really opening up and changing him as they were stuck together just with the two of them. So yeah, I mean, I can see him being more affected. So I mean, I guess we'll find out, and we'll see next season. So I know there's something else I wanted to mention with the trade-off and the aftermath of it. There was Maggie just super upset about it. No, I'm like,
now's your time to swoop in, Dave.
Now's my time to swoop. Now's one of your guys' time to swoop in and save me from stumbling over when there's some other negotiating point that I want to mention.
Oh, and just to be clear, Armani Baron, the other plan was just as risky. You're absolutely right, but the other plan probably at least wouldn't have had Beth do that move to Dawn. Perhaps someone else would have taken care of Dawn before Beth had a chance.
It would definitely panned out differently.
But it was just as risky. Yes, I'm not saying one. I was never saying one plan's better than the other.
And thank you, by the way. That gave me time to think about what I wanted to say. So here, what I want to bring up was the fact that after these groups settle the trade-off and all that, we get both groups offering each side, like, hey, if you want to stay in the hospital with us, you're welcome to. And then Rick offering anyone who wants to leave is welcome to come with me. And we see that nobody takes these offers.
Except for Noah.
Well, Noah had already pretty much become part of that group, though.
Yeah.
So I kind of already
we knew what he was gonna do.
Yeah, I already considered Noah part of the Rick group at this point. But when the two groups that came in, no one left. Is what I mean to say.
I kind of want to see Edwards leave, but I mean, he's at a hospital. He's the only doctor. I don't even think the police officers would have let him leave.
I wonder though, if he did decide to leave, if they would have gone with him. I mean, maybe he doesn't have that much pull as much as Shepard or something.
I mean, I also feel like as much as Edward hates the system, I think he really does feel like he's doing something good.
And he's safe there.
Yeah, and he's safe. He's like, I'm safe. I'm safe. I'm safe. I'm safe.
He's got his music.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's got his generator.
He's got
some
over
stuff.
His head.
Yeah.
He's got his
like,
creature comfort.
He's like, I'm the highest up here.
Yeah.
I'm the top of the food chain, baby.
I was kind of hoping, I mean, they wouldn't show whoever chose to go with them, you know, right then and there, but I was kind of hoping we'd see a new face or something in the group when they walked out of the building.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see that.
Yeah,
but
would have been interesting.
Like the old guy who was getting beat earlier, Percy.
Aw.
Yeah.
No,
So
he
sad for Percy.
wouldn't laugh.
You know, Ematique in the chat room. I'm going back to this. Sorry, maybe I'm harped on it. Oh no, it disappeared on me. He said about Rick. They told him not to go back and kill the guys at Terminus and see how that ended. So Rick at some point has to address the issue with the group being soft. I don't think he's going to address the issue with the group being soft, but I think that's a nice comparison. That, you know, he didn't go back to Terminus, and then Bob died, and he didn't go along with his plan.
Yeah.
And Beth died, and again, they're two totally different scenes, but at the same time, it's like these are two times when Rick didn't get to go in and just kill the enemy.
Well, I mean, at this point he's the leader, and sometimes as a leader you have to just not question your decision and go back and be like, well, I did the best thing with what I knew for the information at the time. And again, with these situations, I'm not saying you're wrong, Ematique, because I don't know. I don't think any of us know. But the thing is, like, say they went back to the cannibal group and just killed them all off in that moment. Again, those guys had guns there, and even though... And they had machine guns, and even though there was walkers and madness everywhere, there's still that chance that someone would have died then. And then with this situation, we have the fact that they went in Navy SEAL style. Maybe something would have went wrong. We really just don't know. And maybe you're right. Maybe it would have been the best situation, but it's one of those things where it's just hard to say. And I think especially for Rick, if you're in that position as a leader, you have to just say, I made the best decision I could, and I can't question it. Because if I question it and question myself, then he's just going to get lost, and he's going to completely fall apart. So, I mean, I think what's best for him is just to say, I did the best I could. And just keep on maybe live and learn and make the best decisions you can.
No, and again, I don't think it's going to come back in the next half. So, but just I thought it was interesting.
Yeah. So, and that kind of wraps up the episode, though, with the trade-off and with Beth's big death that we talked about. And really, like we said, just the biggest death we've had in a long time, since season 3.
Yeah.
It was the first big death. I mean, Bob was a big death, but not like compared to Beth.
I think
we weren't as invested in Bob.
Bob was someone I think we were predicting was going to die a while ago. I don't feel it was this big, but it was big enough. It was big enough.
No, I mean,
we saw it coming too. I mean, he was already kind of declining, you know, like physically and his character.
I might disagree. I mean, Herschel was a much more impactful death, but I think Lizzie and Micah were just as big too, because that was such a crazy episode.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was a crazy episode. But I guess I think of it though as like as crazy of an episode as that was, it's a little bit different when it's someone you've been with for at this point 4 seasons.
As long as Beth and Herschel,
right?
That's
so
true.
like that's like, I mean, it's as if like if we were to see Daryl die or someone like that, we'd be like, like it's like one of those types of deaths. Yeah,
no.
Joyce would be like, I'm done with the show.
I'm quitting the show.
There'd be a riot.
But it'd be like, okay, so like say like if Beth, Maggie, Glenn, Rick, or like one of those core group characters. Carol, again, now part of the core group. Like, that's what you think of the core group. Like, who is the core group? Are those characters?
Yeah.
And so it's like when those characters die, that's when it's a huge deal.
Totally.
So, yeah, but that ends up wrapping up the episode. Armani Barron saying, what happened to the hashtag Rictatorship? Well, I guess he's learning. I guess he's learning that Rictatorship isn't the best idea, but leadership with a bit of democracy.
Rictatorship was even before the prison, so there's a lot that's gone on since then. Yeah.
Rictatorship was insanity. It was madness. Yeah. Absolute madness.
Are we counting the scene after the credits as part of the episode, or
we need to talk about that?
Yes, we do need to talk about that. So we're going to talk about the scene after the credits. So if you guys didn't watch the credits after the previews, you may want to tune out. Although
there's no previews. It's part of the episode.
Well, I consider it part of the episode. It was after the credits.
It's part of the episode. If you tune out, you tuned out.
Well, I'm saying I consider part of the episode. I'm just saying that as a warning to anyone, so no one gets mad. I was like, All right, so let's talk about the fact that Morgan's back. So we got to see Morgan again, and he's still following the group, still tracing them as he heads over to first the schoolyard, and then eventually smiling at the altar of the church before he finds the map from Abraham to Rick that said Rick was a great leader, and then he sees that first real hard evidence.
Yeah.
And also says they're going to DC, so we have to question, is that still where they're going to be going? So we'll have to figure out where Morgan's at.
I feel like if DC was the end, like if that was their solution to everything, then that would kind of shorten the show. Like, I feel like DC isn't going to be where they're headed anymore. I think it's still going to be the conflict and like running through life, surviving all that stuff. But maybe Morgan is going to go there, or maybe he'll run into them before he, gets to Washington.
I think the gang's going toward. I think they're going toward Washington D.C. They're just going north.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense. Like find new territory, keep on going.
Yeah.
The question to me is how long has it been for Morgan? Because I don't think we still know like how much later this is with Morgan after the group has left. Because this could now be at this point maybe Morgan stumbling across this map at this exact time period that the group is all entirely at the hospital.
Well, I think there was some question with the first episode when we saw Morgan. I think things looked very different, and people were saying that was a big time jump.
Yeah, no, the first episode looked like a huge time jump, and at this point, I think it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
I mean, we know what all the markings are, and that's what we were first confused about the first episode. What are those markings? And now we know what they are, and that's what he's still tracing and following.
What are they? Oh, that was what the hunters were.
Yeah, that was what
Okay.
So we've seen those now, and we get what he's following. And before it was just like, oh, it's this mysterious thing. So yeah, it is a question to me at least of what the time gap is. Maybe it is this giant time gap, but I at least to me, I'm not sure exactly what that is. I mean, it could have been maybe this is a month later, maybe it's while they're at the hospital. So that's kind of what my question would be.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have any more insight than I do.
I don't think we're going to see Morgan anytime very soon. I would say at least if earliest bet, maybe 3 episodes in, 2 or 3. Well, I'll say 2. That's kind of soon. I think at least 3 or 4.
What are the odds on that? Betting man and
well, they're definitely not. I don't think he's going to show up. I mean, we're kind of starting to talk about the big P word. So should we go into that, or is there anything else to say?
Well, let's. I don't think we really have any news and gossip per se.
Other than the fact that it's Robert Kirkman's birthday today.
Oh,
when we're
hey,
shooting
wow.
birthday.
Happy birthday, Robert Kirkman.
So,
and congratulations on all your success.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, that's some pretty good gossip. All right, then. So let's go ahead and talk about predictions for next week, or next mid-season.
Next season.
And now, your AFTERBUZZ TV predictions.
I should say next half season. All right, so did you want to start off, Nando?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it doesn't make sense for Morgan to show up right away in the first episode again, so I think it'll be another teaser. I'll say like episode, I'll say, what is it, 8 more episodes? So I'll say episode 4. I'll say he'll show up like episode 4.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
I think they're going to hold off too.
Yeah.
Just going on from the previews that we got today, Maggie is definitely going to be a weakness in the group now. I mean, she showed to be super strong the past couple seasons, but I think this is her breaking point. She's going to kind of hinder the group more than help them, and maybe even Daryl a little bit. But hopefully, they'll find consolation in each other and help each other out to get better. But I think they're definitely going to hinder the group.
I mean, just based simply on the previews, to me it seemed like Maggie was going to be the bigger hindrance than Daryl. Specifically based off of what we saw in the previews, that she was going to be the one most affected and pretty strongly affected by it. It might affect her for multiple episodes. As far as Morgan goes, I agree with you. It probably will be a few episodes, but I'm just wondering, as far as where the characters decide to go from here, what their motivation is going to be and what's going to move them in a certain direction. Because Morgan's almost that perfect key point of here's something to intervene with the group and send them in a new direction. Now that Eugene had sent them in a certain direction, now that's gone, so they almost need some sort of new direction at this point, or someone to send them a certain way for why they're going to go in any place.
That's the one question, the catalyst to get them that direction, because now that we know Morgan's heading that way, if they're going to meet up with the group has to head that way too. So it's just what's the motivation. And I mean, are we going to do a little? Can we do a little comic talk for a second with a little minor spoiler? I mean.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess this wraps up the predictions, so we'll talk a little bit about the comics, and anyone who wants to not hear any comics, we're done with the rest of the show, so you can tune out now. We're going to talk specifically comics and wrap up. So thank you guys for joining.
Yeah.
We'll see you after this after the show comes back on.
Yeah, well, this is just a minor comic thing, so I don't think it's a major spoiler, but I'm warning you guys just in case. The next big location that the guys go to is Alexandria, which, if I remember correctly, is kind of like a suburb of DC, so it's fairly close to DC. So and based on some of the scenes that we kind of saw toward the end, it looked like there was a house, some other stuff. It kind of looked like they were possibly heading toward a more rural, suburban type area.
I mean, I think it would make sense that maybe they're like, maybe we should go check it out anyways and just see what's happening in other areas, because at this point they're pretty lost.
Yeah.
Like, they're just living. They're just surviving, as they keep on saying.
And there is a person that they find, at least to get them to Alexandria, who we haven't seen, or I haven't seen any casting news on that person yet. So I don't even know if that person's there. But I would imagine that would be the motivation. It just surprises me because I feel like they're still so close to Atlanta that they're nowhere near DC.
Yeah, it's funny how close they ended up being. I was like, oh my God, I thought they'd moved on by now, so far away, and they're just right there, right up the road.
Well, they're on in Atlanta. Yeah, they're so close to Atlanta, they're actually in Atlanta right now. So yeah, but that's far away from DC. So it's kind of odd. That's why it's confusing to see what direction they'll go to if they're going to actually go, closer to DC.
They've just been walking in circles.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, that wraps up this after show. Thank you so much for joining in throughout the season. If you guys have any comments or thoughts, please let us know on YouTube or iTunes. Please rate us positive or negative. If it's negative, just let us know how we can make the show better for you guys, so we can understand and be like, yes, we will make this better for you guys. We love constructive criticism. Once again, I'm Dave Klein. You can find me on Twitter at @TheDaveKlein. That is Klein.
And you guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at JAJOURI, and that's it.
And you're in Gotham.
Yeah, well, that's also in the mid-season break.
Tomorrow, but isn't tomorrow an episode?
No.
Oh, never mind. All right. You can find me on Twitter at Nandovel, Nandovel. You can also find me here on AfterBuzz for Homeland, Scorpion, and Blacklist when it returns February 1st. And I think Walking Dead returns February 8th, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I believe Daryl sadly could not make it tonight, but we should give a shout out to him. Thank you so much, Daryl. Unfortunately, he's out of town. But thank you so much, guys, for joining in, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.